Having the right set of wheels for the style of your riding is important and is the fastest way to improve comfort on your bike. It was once thought that rotational weight was the most important thing weight-wise on your bike. This is because they thought it took more force to get the rotational weight up to speed. But, or this may be slightly true, that effort isn't gone to waste. Once up to speed, the effort required to keep the speed is much less because of the rotational forces. This is known as kinetic energy and it's kept within the wheel, it's not just lost, you know. And now if you have to put on the brakes pretty hard, it will scrub off a little bit, but in general, one outweighs the other, so having a heavy set of wheels, no worse than having a light set. Of course, having a lighter set of wheels will mean that your bike is lighter overall, and the improvements of having an overall lighter bike are still there, but it's not down to rotational weight. With that being said, wheels can have a big difference on the way your bike handles. In my opinion, a good set of wheels can really improve an even bad frame. So what do you need to know? Again, you need to ask yourself, what are you going to be using your bike for? The answer to this will determine what wheel set you choose. I'm going to go through each element of the wheel right now. It's probably a good idea to buy a whole wheel set already built, and there are, again, great options out there. There's no real reason why you shouldn't. I'm going to decide to build my own. So again, you can watch me do that in another video, and I'll show you why I chose what I did in another video. But for now, these are just the things that you need to consider when looking for a good wheel set. Tires. Now generally you get whatever type of wheel set you want, and then you look at the tires after, but I'll talk about tires here because they're probably the most important part. They're what connect you to the road, so whatever's on the road will be transferred through the wheels first. I always try to go for as wide a tyre as I can, just to improve comfort. Obviously, the wider you go, the slower you'll be, but this is not always the case. It will depend on your terrain. As I said before, if you perfectly paved roads around where you are, then maybe skinny is best for you. A 23mm tyre will see you going fast. But if you're like most places in the world where the roads just aren't up to scratch, then maybe a 28 or even a 32mm tyre will be better because it stops the vibration coming up through the handlebars, and it absorbs a lot of vibration. It also allows you to roll better over rough terrain, which doesn't slow you down. I don't know about you, but there's lots of times when I go through a rough section, I could be humming along at 30 km an hour, come to a rough section, and you could literally feel yourself slowing down. It's as if you're going up a hill. Having a wider set of tyres at a lower pressure will allow me to roll over those sections without slowing me down. One thing that adds to this myth is that when you put on a wider set of tyres, okay, I remember I went from a 28 to a 32mm tyre, and man, I felt so slow. I'm sure I've minutes down on me Strava sections, but when I got home I put my times up in Strava, and it's actually seen that I was pretty much the exact same time as what I was getting. So why did I feel so slow? I think it was because I couldn't feel the vibrations of the road as much, so it felt much smoother. Because of that, I just felt like I was riding slower, but I wasn't. Obviously, Strava showed me that it was actually the same times. So what does that teach me? It taught me that wider tyres are more comfortable, and if I had an option between comfort and the feeling of riding fast, I'm going to choose comfort, especially for long distance adventure rides. Tyres, now you can get knobbly tyres. Obviously, if you're going to be going off-road more, on the gravelly sections, especially in the wet, you're going to want some knobs in those tyres to help you from slipping around. On roads, knobs can slow you down, especially if they're pretty big. If you're going to be doing a lot of road, but then some gravel sections, I'd go for a high treads per inch. Basically, this means to be smaller knobs closer together. This stops the knobs from being too big and causing you that same stopping power you would find if you're on a rough road. Yes, obviously if you get 650B wheels, then you can nearly get mountain bike tyres on it there if you want, if you're really going to be going off-road. Depends on where you're riding. Compound of the tyre is basically the rubber, what the rubber is made from. You can have hard compound rubber, which will last you a long time, but won't be great on the wet, or as for giving you grip, that won't grip the road surface as much as a soft compound. The soft compound is the opposite. It'll grip the road a lot more, but will wear out quicker. Now, it's up to you, but I'm always going to go for soft. I need grip. I'm always going to go for safety. I did say to wear it faster, but they're not going to wear it fast. Puncture resistance. Now, I don't know about you, but having a puncture on a ride can really ruin it for me. I remember I got a really expensive pair of wheels and put them on, super soft, super fast, but God, I punctured every second ride. I got a puncture, so they were gone. I had to get rid of them, so I got gator skins and they last forever. I've never got a puncture on them. They have like a bead underneath the rubber that stops punctures coming through. So actually no, I do remember getting a puncture, but it was a road over glass, so not really much. There's not too many tires that would put up with that anyway. Folding bead or wire bead. This refers to the material used to create the bead that sits around the rim of the wheel. Wire beads hook into the rim. So how do you know if you have a wire bead or not? Well, a wire bead will kind of hold the circle shape even if it's not on the rim. You would have seen a lot of wheels that are folded up, packaged away on shelves. They are obviously folding bead. They're made out of like a Kevlar material, which is better. The two of them work the same. I would recommend getting folding bead, especially for long distance cycling. If you're really going long, you can take an extra tire with you in your pack, whereas obviously you couldn't take a wire bead. Where are you going to put it? So it's the obvious advantage with that. You need to be aware what type of rim you have for your tire as well. If you're going to go tubeless, if you're going to go just clincher with tube or tubular. Now, for tubular, I'm not even going to get into that. Don't get tubular. You can't fix them on the side of the road. Basically, a tubular is a tube and wheel in one. So if you get a puncture, you pretty much have to take the whole thing off the rim and glue it back on. Pretty much glue it on, so you can look. Just don't go tubular. Trust me. So consideration between tubeless and clincher, or just clincher. I'd always go tubeless. I say that I never had ridden tubeless on the road. But all my mountain bikes are tubeless and I've never got puncture on them. So because of this new frame I have, it will allow me to ride wider tires. I'm going to go tubeless with those. You know, the benefits to this is obviously I won't really need to find a tube that is puncture resistant, because for tubeless tires you put tire sealant inside and it swirls around the wheel as you ride, and if you do get a puncture, this sealant will actually go into those holes and repair them as you ride, which is great. You can use tubeless tires even on a system that isn't tubeless, although if you know you're never going to use tubeless, then maybe don't, because it can be quite hard to get onto the wheels sometimes, onto the rims, especially after a puncture. So that's the only downside to them. If you're not sure, then I'd keep my options open and I'd go and get a tubeless rim and tyre. Just as I say, it gives you more flexibility. Before you decide which rim you should get, you first need to decide which type of tyre you're using, and as I discussed, tubular is at the window, so it's either clincher or tubeless clincher. So if you're not sure if you want tubeless or not, then go tubeless. If you're sure you're never going to use it, just go clincher, because it just makes it that little bit easier to get the tyre seated, especially when you're out on the road with cold hands, and we all know it. So the next consideration for your rim is the rim width. Now again, you might be surprised to hear that having a wide rim width is actually more aerodynamic. Now there's also an internal width you need to be aware of. Having a wide internal width will give you more stability and air volume, which means more comfort. But you can go too wide if you don't intend on running wide tyres. This chart will show you what internal width of rim you need, depending on what width of tyre you intend on riding. As you can see, a 19mm internal width is pretty much everything I want anyway. It starts for tyre width, starts 28mm, right up to 62, which I'll not be even going to. But I think the lowest I will be going is 28mm, so that's why I will probably go for 19C. This will give me the most volume. The depth of the rim is the distance from the tyre bead to the spoke. So this is the rim I have from here. The depth of the rim, so this depth here, so it's the width from the tyre bead to the spoke. Having a deep rim here will be more aerodynamic and it will also look pretty cool. That being said, having a really deep rim can be a little bit dangerous, especially in crosswinds. I remember first time I rode a set of deep dish wheels, I was riding along as normal, and it wasn't a particularly windy day. There was wind out, but nothing I wasn't used to. I rode past this, I was riding along a hedge, and I came to like an opening where there was an old farm gate opening, The wind was obviously blowing through it. I got to there and I mean, it blew me right across the road. If there hadn't been any cars coming, I was a goner. The wind had caught my front wheel and just guided me way out into the road. So that was the last time I've ever ridden deep ditch wheels. There's no need to have it really, especially for this type of riding. Better to be safe, I think, than the small benefits you're going to receive from having an aerodynamic rim. Next is the spoke count. So this is the amount of spoke holes in the round wheel. Now again, there are some considerations you need to look out for, and these are obviously your terrain you're going to be cycling on, the rider weight, if you're going to be carrying much baggage. So first of all, obviously terrain, if you're going to be hitting a lot of bumps, and if you're a heavy rider, you're going to want more spokes. Obviously, if you're going to be carrying lots of baggage, more weight, you're going to want more spokes. Having a high spoke count can be favourable for adventure riding, because if one breaks, then you can still carry on. For example, if you had an 18 spoke wheel and one spoke breaks, you're going to have a big buckle, and that buckle will rub against your brakes, and it'll be the end of your ride. So if you had, say, a 32 spoke, if one of them spoke breaks, even though it's unlikely, then you probably won't even notice, so you'll be able to get home pretty easily. Don't be fooled into thinking less is better as well. The standard used to be 36 spokes. The manufacturers decided to get clever and market that less spokes is better. They claimed that the wheels were lighter and more aerodynamic. While these claims are true, the benefits are far less than what they claim. Firstly, it is logical to think that less spokes is less weight. But in order for them rims to function properly, they have to make them stiffer and heavier. And even the spokes used have to be heavier. So although you are using less spokes, the rim's going to be heavier. Your spokes are probably going to be heavier. As for the aerodynamic argument, well, yes, they are more aerodynamic, but unless you're at the top of your game, it isn't going to be significant. For adventure bikes, reliability is key. So I recommend going for a spoke count, say 32, even 36. Whatever you do, don't go below 28. It's just not worth the risk. Rim materials. Two big materials that I recommend are carbon and aluminium. The biggest difference between carbon and aluminium is unfortunately the price. Due to the difficult manufacturing processes, carbon wheels can set you back $1,000 to $2,000 easily, depending on your quality and brand. The same set of aluminium wheels could cost you anywhere between $100 to $700. So why would you pay the extra money? Two things: weight, and to make the bike look so damn cool. You could save anything from 0.5 to 1 kilo in weight, which is pretty massive, but so is the price. Some would say to just lose a kilo of fat and save money for a holiday. Carbon rims are also considered to be more aerodynamic because you can have a much deeper rim without adding too much weight. The only place where an aluminium rim can outperform carbon rim is if you're using rim brakes. Braking on an aluminium rim is far more effective, especially in the wet. And because rim brakes will eventually wear out the rim itself, it can be a very costly replacement.